you have people that are basically keeping billions under their mattresses, or what they do, they buy cattle. So he wants to sit in his house and say, "Oh, I have 2,000 pigs, so this is my fortune."
Wow. So people are not putting their money in a bank. They're buying pigs
Yes,
and cows and things like that
yes, yeah.
as store of value. Do you think that this makes it easier to explain the value of something like Bitcoin to these folks?
Let's imagine you buy a cow when it's like 6 months old, right? And you assign a token to this cow. How do we make this transition easier so that people go from cow to digital token and from digital token to Bitcoin?
You're listening to another episode of Empire. I'm Jason Yanowitz, and today I sat down with Nelly Chatue-Diop, the CEO of Ejara. The first half of this episode, we went really deep on just what's happening in Central and Western Africa, the economic state of the area, and then in the second half, we talked about Nelly's journey going from a small city in Cameroon as a teenager to going out to Europe and then coming back to Cameroon to build what she thinks is going to change the lives of millions of individuals in Africa. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe on Apple, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on really wherever you get your podcasts. So, all right, see you on the other side. I hope you enjoyed the episode. This episode is brought to you by LUKKA Tax and Exodus. Stay tuned for more info. Nelly, I am so excited to have you on the show. I reached out to a few folks, Koki and Meldum and several others, and you are the most requested guest that we have had so far. So welcome to Empire.
Wow. Oh, thank you for saying that. And thank you to them. I'm so happy to talk to you today, Jason, and to your audience, obviously.
Yeah, of course. How's life in? So where are you? Where are you right now?
Oh, so I'm currently based in Cameroon, which is like a country based in Central Africa, and it's very hot out there. So, yeah.
Very hot. Okay. How hot are we talking?
Oh, between 40 and 42 degrees. So we are really looking forward for the rainy season that is supposed to happen anytime soon. So we are kind of sick of the dry season already.
Yeah, yeah. Do you live in the city in Cameroon?
Yes, I live in Douala, which is the economic capital of Cameroon. So it's like really the business city, and we have the port. So yes, I mean, yeah, it's a big city. I think the second largest city in Cameroon.
Amazing. Very cool. So, Nelly, we are going to have a lot of fun this episode. We're going to talk all about Ejara. We're going to talk about your story. You were a chief data officer in France at a large
Yes.
gambling company, and we're gonna get into all that. But I think it'd be really helpful to start this actually. A lot of our audience is based in the UK and in the United
Mm-hmm.
States and in Canada. Um, and just in North America in general. And I think it'd be really helpful to give a primer on what's happening in just Central Africa and in Cameroon right now and in West Africa, more at a political and economics level. And then we can start to dive deeper into crypto. And then eventually we'll talk about your story with Ijara.
Sure. So you have this older generation that has been in the power since the independence in 1960s. And it has been like very few turnovers. Like for example, in Cameroon, we have only lived under one president. So like for the past like almost 40 years, I've known only one president in my country.
Wow.
And the same can apply to almost all the countries across this area. So, and when the young generation comes in, like people my age, even younger, and they see that economically we haven't really leapfrogs as we would expect, things are still stagnating, and they are also more open to what is happening elsewhere, because now with internet and the spread of information, we can compare our living standards with what is outside of Africa. So that means that people aspire to much more than maybe their parents and grandparents before. So that's kind of what's happening. Obviously, fortunately, it doesn't result yet into like large wars or like what we used to see. But I think that it's also very promising for the future that the young generation is taking matter in hands, and they are acting. They are asking for what they think they deserve.
Hmm. You mentioned Senegal.
Yes.
I was reading Senegal just blocked access to social media and to
Yes.
messaging apps. Why? So what's going on here? Why does the government block access to social media?
So basically, in Senegal, the president has been in power for the past 9 years, and next year it's supposed to be an election, and he's really worried that he won't get re-elected. So he decided conveniently to put in prison, in jail, his principal opponent. And I think that was the last straw for the young generation, because due to also COVID, people are having really hard times. Like Senegal is not as it as United States, for example, or the UK or France, and it's the same in sub-Saharan Africa. We are basically not that hit by COVID, and despite that, Senegalese president implemented some kind of curfews and lockdown, and people feel like it's overreacting. It's just like copying and pasting what has been implemented in France, like the old colonialist empire, and people feel like, okay, it's adding up to their struggles, and it's making them poorer. So having this opponent in jail, people just lost it. And that's why, because they were afraid of the spreading of how the content was spreading, the block internet. And I think this is the playbook that every single president in Western Central Africa has used. And that's why I already registered for Starlink. I'm really hopeful of what Elon Musk is trying to achieve, and really, really hope that, it will be the start of countries or governments not being able to kind of confiscate the power of people to access free information, to deny them the freedom to kind of get their voices out there.
This is a crazy playbook. So the playbook that you're
Yeah.
saying that is run is the president who's been in power. You said in I think it was Senegal is 40 years,
Yes.
right? That's
9 years. Yes.
9 years. Okay, and Cameroon is
Yes. Yes.
40
Okay.
years.
It's 40 years exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They will, if they have an opponent who they think they're going to lose to, they will literally
Yeah.
put them in jail, right? And so what happened
Yeah.
in Senegal is the young
Yeah.
people who are frustrated took to the streets and they started posting on social media. The Senegal
Exactly.
president banned social media, and now you started talking at the end about Starlink and free information. But how does, like when we read in the news that they blocked access to social media, how do you block access to social media? Are they shutting down the
Oh,
internet?
basically, it's ISPs. It's ISPs. I think, you have like few ISPs, and they just, go to see them and tell them, if you ever want to stay in Senegal at some point again, you should just block access to those websites. And it's basically all the social media companies and websites. So that's how they do it. Even in Cameroon, we have like a small civil war, no, I shouldn't say a small, it's like actually huge, because it has been going on since 2018, going on in the southwest and northwest of Cameroon. That were the Anglophone regions, because Cameroon was colonized by France and by the UK. So this part of Cameroon feels like they have been undermined consistently since that Cameroon became only one country. And when they try to push the governments to do better by them, the response was dropping the army people on them and killing the people, like raping the wives. I mean, it was like a butcher, and the government just also cut the internet, and yeah, I mean that's the playbook.
Wow, that's crazy. So they go to the large ISPs and they say, so what are the big social media? tools there, like Facebook and WhatsApp and
Oh yeah, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, because Twitter there was this tag like Free Senegal, and it echoed to the previous tag that we had in Nigeria, I think 3 months ago, and SARS when the young people also took to the streets to manifest against like the police that were abusive. So yeah, Twitter, Facebook, even YouTube. I mean, because YouTube videos, because through videos people are posting like the real video feed that they can record on the street. So it contradicts the message that the government wants to put out there across the international community and say, oh, everything is handled peacefully, don't worry, we are not firing with real bullets on our own people. And when you see YouTube videos showing basically the contrary, it's kind of messy. So that's also why they block social media companies.
so. But people must know what's like. Does anybody support the government, or there's no real support? People must know what's happening, right?
Yeah, but like it's complicated. I think we shouldn't, when we talk about Africa, and we feel like everybody is as informed as us, everybody has access to internet and everything, even those young people getting on the streets. I can bet you that maybe only 1/10 know why they are on the streets, like the real cause. Like for most of them, they just saw people on the street and they saw like, okay, there's a movement going on, I'm poor, I'm sick of it, let's just manifest, because access to internet, access to data is still very expensive. And Africa is still 70% rural, so villagers, and people in villages, they might not be as informed as people that are that have done like higher studies. So yes, and that's where sometimes those people in power go to find people that vote for them, because when election times come, they distribute rice, they distribute oil, they distribute corns, and people just vote for them, and they say, oh, they gave me rice, they gave me corn, I was able to eat like for 1 week, who else gave me that? And so and that's why it's really complicated to always say those people stay in power only because they are cheating on the election during the election poll. I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's part of it surely, but also there's part of a lot of uneducated people in the villages that are not, or that even don't care, because no matter who is in power, they don't really see how it can relate to them bettering of their life.
You mentioned a lot of the folks are 70% rural. A lot of the folks are quite poor. What's the economic situation like? We're this is a kind of Bitcoin and crypto focused podcast, right?
Yeah.
A lot of folks in the States like to talk about Bitcoin as maybe a new currency, or kind of solving like hyperinflation and things like that. What is the economic and more specifically like the currency situation there?
Oh, then let's focus on the French Africa zone, which has two monetary kind of unions. So 14 countries share the same currency that is called the CFA franc. The CFA franc is pegged to the euro, and it's a fixed rate. And I think in this region, over the last 10 years, fortunately, the GDP growth has been outstanding, because in Ivory Coast, for example, it has been like 7% growth over the past 10 years. I think in Cameroon, we are at 5%. So the situation is improving. We have a rising middle class. In the last 5 years, for example, in this Francophone, in French Africa zone, which is about 200 to 250 million people, we have doubled the size of the middle class. So things are happening, things are improving, but not as fast as it could be if we had better governance, like better transparency and better access to the global economy. And that's how it's we make the transition to Bitcoin and the crypto economy, right? Because right now, what I see is like a lot of younger people trying to do e-commerce, like locally producing products from Africa. And now with the likes of DHL, they have a way to send it abroad. But how can they receive payments, because PayPal is blocking most of African countries? So, and also you have people designing services like coaching classes, or even giving classes in IT or community management of everything that are based in Ivory Coast, in Cameroon, or elsewhere, and they can give that to people that are abroad. But how do they get paid for their services? And you have those merchants. You have those merchants that are trying to order goods from India, from China, and whenever they want to pay their suppliers and they want to go through the banks, then there is a heavy regulation around currency exchanges, around sending money outside. So it can take very long time, sometimes 14 days. It costs like an arm. And that's where Bitcoin and crypto can really solve those struggles that people are encountering now, and that are dampening this potential growth we are missing. So whenever people say, oh, we are growing at 5%, 7% a year, I'm like, think about how much we are leaving on the table, right? We could do double that. So how can we do double that? What could be the solution?
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break from the show, talk about two sponsors. You guys heard them on the last two episodes. It's LUKKA Tax and Exodus. I wanted to re-record both of the ads, though, just because they're kind of one story and one update from one of the companies. So I just wanted to fill you guys in. The first one is LUKKA Tax. LUKKA, it's tax season right now, as some of you guys probably know. Taxes are so damn complicated that the IRS pushed back the deadline another month, so you guys, including me, could figure out our taxes. For folks in crypto, you guys know that crypto taxes can be an absolute nightmare. Fun little story, I tried having my accountant, this guy Josue, figure out how to do my taxes, and it was an absolute nightmare because of the crypto, right? A lot of us at least, have crypto held on a few different platforms. I've got crypto on like Exodus, a few other places, and you've got to deal with FIFO, you've got to deal with LIFO, there are exchanges, there are custodians, there are wallets, and what LUKKA Tax basically was able to do was, first off, super cheap, right? I had Josue go over to tax.lukka.tech/empire, which is my URL. I get hooked up if you guys go over there and create an account, so do that. But I had Josue head over to LUKKA, and it just made it super easy for him to do my taxes. So you can have your accountant plug into LUKKA, you can do it yourself. But yeah, I'd highly recommend LUKKA if you guys are trying to do your crypto taxes this year. tax.lukka.tech/empire. All right, head on over. All right, a lot of you know the second partner for the show is Exodus. I bet 20 or 30 people hit me up last time, said, is Exodus legit? Who is Exodus? How do you hear about Exodus? So I want to share a little background on that story. Basically, Exodus, a lot of people don't know them. They've been around since 2015. They have over 100 employees. They've raised a boatload of money, which we'll talk about in a second, and they're one of the best kept secrets in the space. Hardcore Bitcoiners, people who have been around since like 2012, 2013, love Exodus because they basically let you manage your private keys, which is really sought after. If anyone's heard of not your keys, not your crypto, Exodus allows you to basically do this. They got super low fees when you're buying Bitcoin. You've got a built-in exchange. They let you plug into DeFi really easily. So they're an amazing wallet. When I first heard about Exodus, actually, our sales team had brought it to me and said, do you want to work with this company? I hit up Peter McCormick because I knew that they advertised with Pete. Pete said, yeah, they're super legit. I do a lot of my business banking with them. He basically gave his stamp of approval. I checked out the product, gorgeous UI, UX, really good security. So I'd really recommend it. They just raised $59 million in 4 days. Super impressive. So they're really well capitalized. And yeah, I'd recommend checking out Exodus. You can find them at exodus.com/empire. All right. Let me know what you think. Just to summarize kind of the CFA franc, the currency, right? To make sure I understand that, there are 14 countries that were kind of colonized by France. They all use one currency called the CFA franc, which is pegged to the euro. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Is there, I was reading a little bit about how some people are calling for, some kind of activists call for a new currency because they say that the CFA franc is kind of this hangover from the colonial period, and
Yes.
their argument seemed to be, if I understood it correctly, a new unified currency that would be managed by a common African central bank. So
Yeah.
you would change the pegging of the CFA franc from the euro to maybe a basket of currencies, or just something else. Is this kind of Western media saying this, or is this actually happening on the ground?
Oh no, yes. I mean, on the ground, you have a lot of activists, a lot of even sound economists that are lobbying for us getting out of the CFA franc as a currency. And to be honest, is it even a currency when you don't even have like a proper central bank? What is the mission of our central bank? When you are in France, you know that the mission is to kind of make sure inflation is not over the board. When you are in the UK and the US, you come to make sure that the employment rates stay high enough and everything. But what is the mission of the central bank in this region? It's only to maintain a kind of reserves to the French coffers, because we need to be sure that we are still fixating, like the pegging is still worth it. And I don't know of any country that managed to grow substantially without having a handle on their monetary policy. Think about China, how in the 1990s, 2000, they used to be accused of arbitrarily, devaluating the yuan because they wanted to boost export. We don't have the luxury to do that. We are pegged to the euro. I mean, even like I don't even know if there is one single country in the eurozone that is at par with one country in our zone. So they are so far ahead. How can we be pegged to that currency? So on this part, I think that yes, definitely something needs to happen, but my concern with people saying that we should get out of it is, how do we get out? What is the transition plan? We replace it by what? And people are lobbying for like this, yes, Central African Bank and everything. But I mean, it's so complicated. Even in Euro, even today, people are still not sure that, okay, it was such a good idea to do like Euro. It's really complicated between Germany and Greece and Portugal. How do you align sovereign interest and everything? So my thinking is that, why don't we just go through like without frontier money, without frontier currency? Why don't we just adopt Bitcoin as like the African currency, and and leave the market decides? At least I wouldn't be worried about maybe having like a bad governance system in a central bank, having people that are unprepared, having like self-interest that matters more than the interest of the population. So why don't we just leapfrog it, like we leapfrog the lifelines and move to mobile phones? Why don't we leapfrog those kind of currency of the past and go to the digital crypto aspect of it?
So let's you said something interesting there, which is you leapfrogged the traditional kind of like landline system
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
United States and went straight to mobile banking. What does mobile banking look like in Cameroon? What's the state of it? Who runs it? Who owns it? What are the
yeah.
platforms that are used? Is it easy? Is it hard?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is very accessible. And I think that's when you start thinking about, even when we talk about crypto, how do we make sure that it goes to mainstream? What happens with mobile money is like it's very accessible. You have almost like 300,000 agents across the zone, and an agent is like you can decide, Jason, to become an agent of a telecom company, right? In the francophone zone, you have mainly 3 to 4 players, like Orange, which is the telecom company of France. You have MTN, which is South African. You have Free, you have Airtel. And what those people did is like they managed to empower agents that you can go through to do deposits and to do withdrawals. So you go to see an agent that is nearby your house, you give them the equivalent of $10, and it gets loaded on your phone. on your mobile phone, and you don't need to have internet or data, because it all goes through the USSD system, which is kind of a low level communication system behind the back end of telecom companies. So those telecom companies, obviously, they don't do the custody. They partner with banks usually, where your money is deposited. But then the money can transition from your phone to your neighbor phone to the merchant phone, So you go to a store and you want to buy, for example, some bread, and it costs like 50 cents. So you just do like a code and you send the 50 cents, and it appears instantly to the merchant account. And that's it, the transaction is done. So that's how it works globally. So it's really accessible. Even people having those basic feature phones that cost like $5, they can use that.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So it sounds like the money system, you've got, in terms of the currency, you've got a currency that's pegged to the euro, so that works pretty well. You've got a system of mobile banking that is arguably more advanced than the mobile banking in the United States, at least for a while. It sounds like things are going pretty well. So what's wrong? What are some of the problems that you're seeing today?
Oh, first, so the telecom companies, basically they own your money. I mean, you might feel like you own your money because it's in your mobile phone, but no, you don't. I mean, sometimes you can get blocked. They tell you that, oh, your KYC need to be revisited. So now what can you do? You have to go there. And so like the centralized approach is, I think, is a drawback that we share with the Western approach that is lying on the traditional banks. The other thing is that the technology behind is not safe at all. Like, you have so many hacks. It's so easy to hack like the USSD platform. And then because it's really accessible, you have our grandfathers in the village. Sometimes they get like SMS. They are not educated enough sometimes to know that it's a fake, it's a scam. So they get scammed, and people, yeah, I mean, it's not really secure, it's centralized. And the fees, although I told you like we had globally like 4 players, imagine how many banks do you have in the US? And for 300 million people, you have so many banks. And here I'm telling you that in this 200 to 250 million population zone, you have 4 players sharing the part. So imagine what they do. The fees are crazy, and sometimes I just get so mad. But since it's like the only thing that we have, and we think at the time, I think we were thinking that we were innovating, but right now we are seeing that we are stagnating, because people thought that since it's spread out so quickly and you have millions of users joining the system, but it's because of lack of a better solution, right? So we need to do better. So for me, these are like the 3 drawbacks, like security, centralization, and the fees.
I heard you, I think it was on a podcast or on a video interview series, talking about the kind of dual sectors in Africa, which is the formal sector and the
Yeah.
informal sector. And I think I got this from you, where you said the informal sector represents almost 55% of the
Yes.
combined African economies, and the informal sector is just the part of the economy that is just cut off or partially, cut off from regulation and from institutions and from banks. And these might be blacksmiths or farmers or just small tradespeople. What does this look like? And just kind of contextualize this for someone who maybe has grown up in the United States and doesn't really understand this concept of an informal sector, except maybe
Yeah.
marijuana or, something like that.
Yeah, you have many people that are living day by day, right? And they do whatever they can to survive. And sometimes even people that are above surviving, they prefer it that way. They prefer to stay informal because they don't pay taxes, and nobody can really know their worth. And you have a lot of people because you have to compare that to like 90% of transactions that are based in cash. So this is also like a great power behind like the informal system. So people are basically trading cash, and when people are transacting in cash, I mean, what's the urge? What's the need to go formal? And that's also why a lot of the figures that are displayed about Africa in the likes of McKinsey reports or even the World Bank, sometimes they are misleading, because how can you measure something that is not really measurable? So those informal are the merchants that are selling, the street merchants that are selling goods. You also have some companies that have employees and that are doing exceptionally well, that are importing and exporting goods, but without being registered formally. And so those past few years, because 55% is actually a huge improvement. 10 years before, it was like 70%, 70 to 75% informal. So countries have been trying to enact fiscal laws that will entice people to register. Like recently in the finance law of 2021, Cameroon enacted some kind of startup laws where they are encouraging people in the digital economy, the startups, to register and to get lower taxes, lower even contributions to social and business taxes to their employees they are registering. So they are trying to make people go more formal, expecting that, okay, if we do that, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to decrease a little bit more this informal. So I really think that if you have to remember one thing, is that people used to think that informal system in Africa was directly linked to poverty and people that live below the $2 per day. But what I'm seeing on the ground is that you have a lot of people in the informal system that are really well off and that are doing really great for themselves. In the north region of Cameroon, for example, you have people that are basically keeping billions under their mattresses, or what they do, they buy cattle. So some people count their wealth in cattle. So he wants to sit in his house and say, oh, I have 2,000 pigs, I have 3,000 beef, so this is my fortune, So this is how he keeps his money in cattle, in sheep, in pigs, in everything. And whenever he needs some money, he sells some, because people always need to eat. So it's actually a great reserve of value in his mind, So.
Wow. So people are not putting their money in a bank. They're keeping hundreds of millions under a mattress, or
Yes.
they're buying pigs and
Yes.
cows and things like that
Yes.
as
Yeah.
store of value. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Fascinating. Do you think that this will make it easier to explain the value of something like Bitcoin to these folks, or harder because they're so not used to the digital world?
Yeah. So I think if you were to explain it the way we explain it in the West, you will go nowhere. But to explain it, you have to use like the cow and the pigs and everything. You really have to think from metaphor that use those things that they know of. And that's also why among all the application I see that could make this crypto adoption go mainstream in Africa is really how we can make the combination of physical asset to digital asset. I think it will make people the transition easier, right? If you could tell them that, okay, this is your cow, maybe let's imagine you buy a cow when it's like 6 months old, right? And you assign a token to this cow. But as this cow grow older and this cow, it appreciates in value. So your token also appreciates in value. And when you resell it, you can burn the token and you keep the profit. And then you have an asset that is appreciating in value and that is linked to a physical asset. Actually, I'm telling you that, but it's a real project that a friend of and I are brainstorming about. How do we make this transition easier so that people go from cow to digital token and from digital token to Bitcoin, those people. But then you have people that live in the cities, in the urban areas, the younger generation, the digital savvy, and this population is also increasing. They might represent maybe 20%, 30% of people, but still it's worth it, right? Because even in the US where you don't have those informal, formal, you don't have those cows, how many people own Bitcoin? I think less than 2%, or maybe even 5% at the maximum. So you don't need 100% to say that it's going somewhere. So first, if we focus on those people in urban areas, we can get to the level that we have in the US or in Europe. And for those people that are more remote to the digital economy, let's make the bridge by mixing what they know and what we are aspiring them to know.
Very interesting. Let's get into crypto in a sec, but first I want to talk about your background, Nelly, and then we'll start talking about Ejara and what you're building. So can you just give folks an overview of you were born in Cameroon, you moved to France, became chief data officer at this big corporate gambling company. What's your background? Take us back to your childhood in Cameroon.
Yeah, so I was born to a family. I'm the oldest. I'm the eldest of my family. We are five girls, and I think since I was very little, I loved mathematics. I mean, I was really, really into numbers. I mean, as far as I can get back. I think my first venture I launched was like in sixth grade. I was selling popcorn, like flavor popcorn at school. And it was during the time, like during the 1990s, in Cameroon, you had a lot of troubles. I think across this West and Central Africa zone, that's where people started asking for more democracy. They asked for more political parties rather than one single party that we had since the independence. So it was a troubled time, and my parents had a little bit hard time getting by. So I had this crazy idea: what if I could contribute to the house, to how we can afford to. My parents can afford to put some food on the table by selling stuff at school. And I started selling some flavored popcorn. And it was pretty successful, like it was 10 cents a pack. And then I grew, I had resellers, I had a lot of combination. And 6 months afterwards, because my results in school were dropping since I was more interested in the business, my parents made me stop. So this was like, I think 10 years old at the time. One event also that really marked my childhood, and that is also something that influenced me a lot when I launched Ejara, was what happened, the devaluation of CFA franc in January 1994. And for me, it's like a trauma because it was basically the first time I saw my dad crying. Because imagine like on the 10th of January, the savings of my parents were like X. And on the 11th of January 1994, it was half of X.
So
yes.
Wait, so that's a fascinating story. What happened on what did you say, January 1994? Why did the currency get cut in half?
So I think from the 1980 to 1990. The countries, the 14 countries didn't grow a lot. Like their economies were stagnating, and people like French people, because they were the ones sitting, and they're still the ones sitting on the central banks of this region, decided that okay, let's boost those economies by making the goods they produce lesser, like in price. And they were saying that okay, by pegging, because at the time it was pegged to the French franc, by pegging the CFA franc to the French franc as it was pegging it to a really higher economy. So we need to diminish it so that they could be more competitive on the market, and make sure that we discourage them to import goods and encourage them to export. So that was the official justification of the devaluation. But obviously, when you do that, you haven't prepared the economy to that. You haven't developed any industries. I mean, yes, it's good to be like, to have a wishful thinking that naturally people like we devalue and then we're gonna export more, import less. but we don't even know how to produce like a single like cotton swab. So how are we gonna manage? How are we gonna get by? So the end result was like the purchasing power of the people locally diminished drastically, and the government, because they had also less money, they stopped paying public servants. All the price of imported goods went through the roof, and at the time, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was almost close to like 90% of imported goods. So those were kind of it was really, really, really hard years to get by.
Your parents are doing everything right, and the government, with just a flip of a switch, cuts the value of the
Exactly,
currency in half. Wow.
exactly, exactly.
So these are two kind of, you're selling popcorn, one formidable experience, and then you see the value of your parents' wealth get cut in half. So
Yeah.
you graduate from college, and then you
Exactly.
left.
From high school, I graduated from high school in Cameroon, and then I left to do my undergraduate studies in France in computer science engineering. And from the moment I set foot in France, you have to take in your, I mean, to keep in mind that in Africa we live in community, right? So even if I left Cameroon, and because I was very successful at school, I had a full scholarship. So, but I still managed to find like a small job, a cashier at a retail store, because I wanted to send money back to my community. Because the way I was raised, there is no individual success. Your success is measured at the success of your community. I cannot be happy if I know that at home, my cousin, my parents, my best friend are not eating enough. So since my scholarship was only covering my needs, I needed to find additional source of revenues to cover the needs of people back home. So since I'm 17 years old, every single month I've always assigned some money back to my community. So when I arrived in France and I started doing that, this was like the first trigger to Ejara that we're gonna come by later, the remittance. I mean, come on. Sometimes I will get like only $100 to send back home, and I will have to pay like $12, $13. I mean, $12 at the time was like my food allocation for a week. So sometimes I just had to eat like pasta and ketchup for like a full week because I really wanted to send back money home, and I knew it was an emergency. Someone needed to get a medical treatment, to buy some drugs. And I would have felt like selfish to just like eat meat and eat like properly if they were undergoing those hurdles. And that's also where I had like my second revolt. I'm like, this financial system is not working for us. It's like working for most of us. It's like working for a part of humanity, but a huge part of the world is left. Like first, you do everything. Your wife is not protected. And then you work, and then you work hard, and then you want to send money, and then 15, 30%, 12% gets taken by only by one company. It was Western Union at the time. So yeah. So then I graduated like in computer science, and I started working as such. But I think from the moment I started working as an engineer in computer science, I was doing some project, and I was like, okay, who the heck is making decisions about what project should get done? Like, I don't think like this is really smart. This project is smart. And then I started investigating, and I realized that, oh, it's good to be a technical person, but it's even better to have like business knowledge, like business acumen, because then you can get to the room where decisions are taken. And then having this technical background, you can always make sure that you tie your technology expertise to creating the maximum value on the business perspective. And that's why I decided to do an MBA, which I did in London Business School in London and HEC in Paris. And after my MBA, adventure into investment banking. Yeah, in 2007. I mean, I think I checked all the boxes, right? So I'm like
You made it.
26
You made it.
something, yes, 26 something. I'm in London, I'm in the city. I'm like, whoa. I think the first salary I got was like maybe 3 times what I got prior to my MBA. And I was like, how do you spend this amount of money? The second month I was there, I was like, I'm not liking the person I'm becoming, because the ethics were really, really, really not aligned with my values. I was like, if I stay in that industry for like 2 more years, I'm not gonna recognize myself. I'm not gonna be happy with what I see in the mirror. And then the crisis happened, right? And somehow I felt responsible. But how could I be responsible? I was just like a junior associate. I had nothing to do. But I could see what was at play, because 6 months before the crisis hit like a climax, I could see all the liquidity pouring in the market. I could see those companies, like the fake due diligence we were making, the high leverage we were allowing those companies to get by. Like, I was like, this is not working. And, in 2008, I decided, okay, I don't want to do banking anymore. And that's when I ventured into the more corporate world, and finding a role that combined like this business aspect that I like so much with my quantitative skills. And I started as a pricing consultant, so using statistical models, using in time like AI and machine learning to access what is the really next to pay of the customer, like what is the proper price for the goods at the proper location. So I did that for quite some time. And I think in 2008, I managed to have my first foot at the table where decisions were taken. I was in executive committee of a big retail company in France. And it was really tough because you are the youngest, you are a woman, and you are a Black African woman in France. I mean, believe me, I heard like so many despicable things getting said, and I felt like, and I think since that moment, and for the 10 years I did in like executive committees in France, I always felt like I was only there because they couldn't find a white guy that has the expertise and the dedication and that I had, like, because the moment they could find like this person, they would just drop me off. And this stayed in my mind despite the fact that I had great managers, I had great leaders earlier in my career. I mean, they were not the one giving me that feedback, but around me, that was kind of the feedback the environment was giving me. So from that moment and the last 10 years, as you mentioned, until the chief data officer role in Betclic, so I've been participating in everything across data, innovation, and that's when in 2016 I fell off my chair because I read about this thing called Bitcoin, and I was like, whoa, this is the answer that God sent to me about like protecting your wealth, making sure you don't pay FT fees when you give back to your community, and so much more.
That's amazing. So you had, just to kind of recap that, you worked in investment bank. You got your MBA. You worked in investment banking. 2008, 2009 financial crisis happens. You move over to the corporate world, and over the last decade or so, you built yourself up to, if I'm right here, you were the chief data officer eventually
Yes.
of this
Yes.
pretty large gambling company. What was that
Yes.
like?
Oh, I mean, it was really fun, and I think I have to tell you how it happened. So, prior to me joining Betclic, which is like the leader in France, in Portugal, in gambling, I was pricing a director in retail. And when I decided to change roles, I could move to another retail company and still be like a pricing director, but with a larger portfolio, or rather I could take the risk and then completely changed the course of my career. And what I identify about myself is that the fear I have of stagnating, of not growing, always overwhelms the fear of uncertainty. So when I was given the choice between continuing down the path that I knew I could do, I could succeed, and starting this whole in this gambling company, I knew nothing about gambling. I was the first hire in the data department. I had no playbook I could rely upon to build my whole. So I had just to jump off the plane and try to find a parachute down the line. But then I decided to do that, and I had to move my family across from Paris to Bordeaux. Like my husband decided like he had to leave his job, like look at all the stress I put on my family, but this is how I am. I mean, I'm a risk taker, and I love being like at the helm of innovation and everything. So I decided to go for that role, and in the 3 years that I stayed there, I increased the department from one person to myself. So when I was one person, I was doing everything. So I was the one strategizing. I was the one doing the consulting. I was the one programming in Python, in R. I was the one doing the slide. I was the one doing everything. And in 3 years after that, I had like a 40 people department. Wow. And it was working across the companies, providing values for the marketing, for the trading, for the finance, and everything. Yeah.
Wow. So, Nelly, you kind of, when you were 17, you went to Europe and to pursue this engineering degree, and Europe, as you said, was like the land of hope and promises and meritocracy, where a 17-year-old African girl could dream of conquering the world. And you kind of did that, right? You got your MBA in investment banking and built yourself up to be this big kind of corporate tech executive. Why leave behind 20 years of a successful career path in Europe to move back to Africa?
I know. I'm going to be totally honest with you. So when you are 17 and you think of conquering the world, you have a picture in your imagination that you're going to be sitting in a room with people that are so brilliant, that are so smart. They will uplift you. They will make you challenge yourself. And then when you get there, it kind of feels empty, because most of the people that succeed over there are not the smartest that you can have. Those are the people that were playing more politics. Those are the people that are more brushed up on the outside, but sometimes the inside is very ugly. Those are the people that don't inspire you. And then you find that you rely on side project, and at the time it was blockchain and the likes of that to kind of energize you. So I was at the point where I was using a lot of energy at work, but I felt like it was depleting my energy, my enthusiasm. Whereas when I was working on the side project, like democratizing blockchain knowledge across Cameroon, across Africa, it was filling me up with a lot of energy. And then at some point I stopped and I asked myself, one, do you know how long you're gonna live? And I was like, I don't know, I could die tomorrow. So if I were to die tomorrow, will I feel like I have succeeded in my life? What is my definition of success? And it was like, oh, I measure my success by how much positively I impacted the people's lives. So every single day I need to say, oh, I met this person, I did that, I did this, I did that, and this changed the life for the better. And I couldn't see that happening anymore in the corporate world. And the second thing was, how much do I need, like in terms of money, to make a living, right? Do I need to earn like 5 figures, 6 figures? Do I really need that? And I'm like, I'm a really simple person, right? I like to eat my fish done on charcoal. I don't really like caviar. I don't really like fancy stuff. So I don't need a lot to live and to be happy, to be content with my life. So why do I need to earn all that money and be that miserable over there, where I can do something I love and have my simple life? So that's how I kind of make the jump.
Wow. All right, let's talk about Ejara. What is Ejara?
So Ejara is so Ejara first vision, Ejara mission is to democratize access to sound financial products for people in Francophone Africa and their diasporas. It's really important, like every single word is important in these sentences. Democratizing, so mainstream adoption, financial products, meaning like all the range, like I started with wealth protection, wealth management, but in time I hope to dive into more product like DeFi, open up the lending areas and everything. And then people in Francophone Africa and the diaspora, meaning people inside those countries and their families that live outside, so that we can have a single platform where you can find the diaspora, you can find the people in the urban areas in Francophone Africa and the people in the villages. Imagine a platform when you can have those three populations that never really mix, that never meet in a single platform, how you can power that to do borrowing, lending, and to kind of finance and power up the economy with the people that stand the most to benefit from those increased economy. So that's my idea, my concept of Ejara, like in the longer term. What is Ejara right now? It's merely like a non-custodial wallet that allows people in Francophone Africa to store Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tezos, but also to buy using mobile money, their local fiat currency. And in the coming weeks, we are also adding other like foreign currencies like Euro, Canada, dollars, because we aspire really to have this diaspora and the people locally.
When I've looked at startups in places like Cameroon and Senegal and Central Africa and Western Africa, there's a lot of remittances
Yes.
is a big focus, right? And
Yeah.
there are a lot of companies focused on the movement of money, less companies
Yeah.
focused on investing your money. Why
That's
did
true.
you decide to pick this problem of investing and growing wealth instead of sending money back and forth?
So, so it goes back to 1994. Think about the trauma I had. My parents saving their wealth, thinking that those savings were going to finance the education of their their children when they grow up. It was a way for them to store the value. And then no, it wasn't such a great way for them to store and to protect their wealth. So this trauma, I think, is the one that makes me so passionate about the investing case. And I have so many investors telling me, why are you doing it the hard way? Just go into remittance. I mean, it's like an easy sell. And I'm like, I'm not passionate about it, to be honest. So I don't feel like doing something I could not die for, like if I had to take 50 years to build that investing company, I'm going to take those 50 years. That I'm sure. I had the roadmap for 50 years laid down in my head. I don't have that roadmap for remittance, to be honest. So, and I also think that when people sometimes look at creating company, they look at low-hanging fruit. Obviously, remittance is an easy sell, like I said. But for me, I look at the macroeconomics, the things that are really changing on that line. So two things. I told you that the middle class has grown, like has doubled over the past kind of 10 years. The middle class is supposed to double in the next 5 years. And these middle class people, if you are a middle class in Europe or in the US, you have like a disposable income that is growing. You have more money that you can save. So yes, we're gonna put a lot of it in kind of safe assets. Like you're gonna buy some land, you're gonna invest in real estate, but then you also want to maybe venture like 1% to 5% of this disposable income into more dynamic assets. So that's why I feel like, why not propose them like investment in like metals, in like stocks, US securities, in like cryptos, because those are only asset classes, and it also teaches them how to invest their money and make their ROI more significant. The second reason is that if you look, we were talking about social media, for example. So people in Africa, they all know about Facebook, Google, YouTube, and they use that a lot. So I'm just telling them, instead of being only consumers, be shareholders. Guys, you are the one contributing to the value of those companies. So also be shareholders. Let's stop this mentality of only consuming. And my hope is that by making this shift, maybe by investing, maybe they might make also this shift when it comes to them consuming other products. They're going to ask themselves, oh, what if I was part of the people producing this thing I'm consuming daily instead of only, consuming it. So I also hope that this could be like a trigger, like a shift in a paradigm, like a mentality that people had entertained like their whole life. And the last reason I will make the case for this investing is that I see a lot of scams going on around investing. A lot of companies are making a lot of chiefs are making fortunes by telling people, give me your money and I'm going to double it every single month and everything. And it happens because people are not educated well about investing. It happens because, we think that people don't want that, but they are human beings. I mean, every human being aspires to grow their wealth. I think it's like a basic human need. So if we start considering like them, like the middle class in Africa, the same as the middle class in Europe, in the United States, then we're going to see that they aspire to the same thing. They are the same human beings and that aspire to the same thing, the same way as middle class in Europe, middle class in the US and in China. So if you think that people are valuing investing companies, investing strategies, asset classes in those areas, it's the same here. I mean, no differences at all. So.
How do people currently buy and sell? I know Ejara is much more than just a crypto platform, right? Eventually, you'll have the ability to give people access to things like, commodities, tokenized assets, right? So someone in, Central Africa or Western Africa can buy something like the S&P 500 or Apple and things like that.
Exactly.
In terms of something like Bitcoin, how does someone in Cameroon buy Bitcoin right now? There's no Coinbase, there's no Gemini, right? How do they do it right now?
No. Oh my goodness. Right now it's only P2P. And I'm telling you, the largest P2P platform is WhatsApp. WhatsApp. So people are just like creating WhatsApp groups and they are exchanging. So every single minute, some people are advertising, I'm selling like $100 worth of Bitcoin and this is my selling price. I want to buy like $50 worth of Bitcoin. And you have some WhatsApp groups that are very evolved, to be honest. I was so surprised. You have some of them that have even higher KYC requirements than any single bank in content of the continent. Like they literally ask you to have other people in the WhatsApp group to walk them through your house so they can take even picture of your of the street that you live in so that they can make sure that you do not scam other people in the group. So WhatsApp group, Telegram. So that's how people are doing it.
Wow, that's amazing. Nelly, let's talk about just being a founder for a second. What is the toughest decision that you're having to make right now, or the toughest thing that you're dealing with right now?
I think the toughest decision I had to make was, I think 2 months ago. It was 2.5 months ago. I started raising my seed, and I think after 6 weeks, I decided to stop because it was taking me a lot of time, a lot of focus from what I wanted to focus on, the product, my consumers, and it was filling me with bad energy, like having all those. It's not the rejection that hurts, like the condescending rejection, the lack of respect that you feel when you are a founder in Africa as a woman, as a black person. I'm accumulating so many handicaps. I don't even know like how I got crazy enough to decide to be a founder. So after 6 weeks, I was like, okay, let's just cut it. I don't want to deal with that crap anymore. Let's find a way to bootstrap this company and make sure I deliver no matter what. And let's make my customers my first investors, because if I focus on them, if I manage to have a lot of traction, I can break even. And so this was kind of the toughest decision I took like 2 months ago. And to be honest, I'm pleased with it. So yeah, this was kind of really, really crazy times, especially like when you need to keep a happy face, when you need to encourage the team, to tell them, oh, don't worry, the future is bright for us. We are getting there. Our goal is to hit like at least $1 million transaction per month, but we're gonna get there. And I'm like, no, you don't know how you're gonna get there. I'm like, no, yeah. I'm gonna find a solution. And my motto is always like, if there's a single person in the world that has found a solution, it means it's foundable. So I'm gonna find one.
I'm gonna wrap this interview up with one question here, and then you can ask me one question. What is one thing that you just want to share with folks, maybe in the States or people who haven't been to Central Africa or West Africa? Just what is one thing that you want to share with them about what it's like to build a startup there, or just what life is like? And
obviously, yes. When you start a company in the US or in France, you have you have the playbook already written, right? So you just care about developing your product, maybe finding some seed money, maybe hiring some talent. In Africa, you have to worry about infrastructure. So when I started, I'm like, okay, how can I make sure that my team and I can keep working despite regular electricity shortages? So I have to figure out, should I buy a generator? Should I buy a solar panel? What is the business case? One costs higher than the other. How can I make sure? And then I have to worry about water supply. Like sometimes also the water gets cut off. So should I dig a well? What should I choose? And then for the internet, then I had to subscribe like to basically like the 4 providers, because every time I have to switch among them because it's like very poor, it's unstable. So this is all the hurdles you have to kind of tackle before even getting into what's even my idea, to be honest. Like, why did I even build? Because after building my generator, after like subscribing to 4 or 5 ISP, how can I do it? But I think those make founders in that zone more resilient. To be honest, I will say that to people listening to us. Whenever you meet an African founder, despite what you will think of the idea, what you will think of the potential behind, have a lot of respect to the fact that those people, despite those hurdles, still manage to have some hope. And I wouldn't even say that to myself, because for me, I'm privileged, to be honest. I come from the diaspora. I have some saving aside. I've known better. I have, but when I see the founders that were born, raised, and that stayed there their whole life and still managed to fund something, I'm like, wow, this is the power of humanity. I mean, like, talent is distributed. It's like madness. So that's what I would want to tell people listening to us.
Amazing. Nelly, you can ask me one question to wrap this up if you'd like.
So Jason, I would love to know, like, what do you get doing that podcast? Like, why do you do that? And I've seen that you already done like some couple of episodes. So what do you get from that? And is it like aligned with what you were expecting to get from that?
So what I get from it is I do this podcast pretty selfishly because there are stories that I wanted to hear that I wasn't getting anywhere else. And I think in the crypto space, we tend to focus a lot on the technology, and we also focus a lot on the macroeconomic environment, and we focus a lot on things like scaling and just the applications that are getting built on top of it and the infrastructure, right? what we never focus on are the stories of the people building these things, right? There are companies today raising hundreds of millions of dollars down to, small founders like yourself who are just getting
Yeah.
started and are going to be
Yeah.
raising hundreds of millions of dollars in a few years, right? And so those are really, yeah, fingers crossed. So those are the stories that I wanted to hear and that I wasn't hearing anywhere else. And so I've done a few episodes already, like you said, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's even better than I expected, right? Because people are
Wow.
pretty open about sharing kind of the trials and tribulations of building this stuff.
Yeah.
Because as a fellow founder, I mean, this stuff isn't easy. So I've been through it,
Yes.
and
So
I know. So it's yeah, I've been loving it so far, and I appreciate you coming on, Nelly.
perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, Nelly. Where can folks find more about you? I know you're on Twitter. Do you guys have a website yet? Where can people find more about you?
Oh, so yes, Twitter, obviously. My email address is also very simple. It's nelly@ejara.io. And I launched, and this is so funny, I launched like a YouTube channel, which is just called Nelly Chatue-Diop, where I post like 5 minutes video in French about crypto, about explaining what is Bitcoin, what is a smart contract. And so this is also how you can comment, you can subscribe to encourage me, because I think when you want to kind of transform a trend to a movement. And I got inspired by the likes of Martin Luther King and all this kind. You have to go where the mass is. You cannot just say, oh, I'm just technical, I'm just geek, I'm gonna sit like talk to the Minister of Finance in Cameroon, telecommunication to the government, to the big companies. But those are not the people I need to convince. I need to talk to the little folks. And where are they? On YouTube. So yeah,
Yeah.
so YouTube, Twitter, and then nelly@ejara.io.
Amazing. Nelly, you have an incredible story. It is impossible to hear your story and not be rooting for you. So I appreciate you coming on, and I hope everybody enjoyed this. And just, yeah, we're rooting for you. So we'll have to do a follow-up episode in a year or so to see where things are at.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to Meltem and Koki. Those are my best supporters. Thank you so much.
Amazing. All right. Thanks, Nelly. Have a good one.
Bye bye.
That was Nelly Chatue-Diop, the CEO of Ejara. If you're anything like me, you were unbelievably impressed by her story. She is not as well known in the space yet, but I'm calling the shot. I think she will be a huge founder and a huge build something that's really impactful. So subscribe to the podcast, head over to our website. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to our newsletter. It's just blockworks.co/newsletter. And I will see you on another episode of Empire next week. Talk to you soon.